Today's video is brought to you by my amazing patrons on Patreon. Priority deck requests and extended discussions are just some of the many perks you get for being a patron. Consider supporting the channel today. Welcome back to today's build. Whether you're just looking for upgrades or have no idea how to build this deck, I'll be your guide to this wonderful game we all love. Let's get started. Today's deck expands the Eminence domain. His name is Sidar Jabari, and this is the Castle Perilous. Sidar Jabari has a text box that is really difficult for a lot of players to read and understand. So today I want to take a little longer showing you what you're not seeing when you read these words. And to do that, we're going to start from the bottom up. Because our commander reanimates knights when it connects, this deck absolutely needs knights. And we know that we get the most value from that reanimation when we're cheating as much mana as possible by reanimating high mana value targets. Let's run over to Scryfall and see what those high mana value targets look like. Right away, I know I'm not looking at cards like this. Even though it has a high mana value, it's so much worse than other cards of that mana value, and isn't really the kind of thing you'd be excited to reanimate. So I'll be ignoring cards like this. But I am looking at Moonshaker Cavalry, which can outright win us the game if we have a wide enough board, and is definitely the premier reanimation target for our commander. Order of Sacred Dusk also rewards us for going wide, but with specifically vampires, where the cavalry didn't care about what creature type we built up with. Here we have some more token makers, some more cards to ignore, and finally, Elenda and Azor, which can draw us cards and also generate creature tokens. Going further down the list, you can also see a lot of other reanimation targets that either make tokens or else care about how many creatures we control. You couldn't tell this from his text box, but I think Sidar Jabari really wants to be a tokens deck as well as reanimator. But before we go too far with that idea, let's read the rest of his text. This ability wants us to control at least one knight for as many turns as possible, but doesn't get any better when we have more knights in play. Whether we have 10 knights or just one, we're still only drawing and discarding exactly one card. And since we're going to be playing Sidar Jabari anyway, because we want to reanimate, a lot of the early low-cost knights we could play lose their relevance really quickly if they're not contributing to the rest of our go-wide game plan. Most of the knights in these lists only exist to be able to get these triggers, and there are so many more efficient ways to get cards into the graveyard that they're not needed at all. I've remarked before that commanders that really ask for a tribal build have abilities that scale well to larger numbers of that creature type. And Sidar Jabari does not have those. At the end of the day, optimization is a tool to use to have more fun, not a goal in and of itself. It is perfectly valid to build a knight tribal list for this commander as long as the reason you're doing it is because it's what you want to build. Don't do it because you think it's what this commander wants, though, because it isn't. As said before, the cheap knights that are really only here to get loot triggers lose their relevance to our game plan very quickly, and can more effectively be replaced with mana ramp that won't lose relevance as quickly to play our commander and the other knights faster. To start with, Roaming Throne is neither a cheap knight, nor is it something that we can reanimate with our commander. Having it in play gets us a single extra loot trigger, and a single extra reanimation, which isn't necessarily going to be that useful since we're running so much fewer knights than normal, which is a mark against Kinsbale and Hakan as well. Quality over quantity is the rule here, and even if it were not, these cards are expensive and absolutely not worth the price tag. We'll swap them out for these cards instead to fill the yard more reliably, expand our board presence, and pump our team more reliably than a single double strike might. Because we're not maximizing the number of knights in the deck, these cards lose a lot of power and are going to have very limited utility. Not to mention that I think we just have better options, even in a knight tribal deck, for what these cards are doing. We'll replace them with these cards instead. So what do our lands look like? Apart from some basics and dual lands to fix our colors, it would be great to have the Surveil lands in here to fill the graveyard with. But seeing as those are climbing in price, we'll look at some substitutions just in case. Nephalia Drownyard and Conduit Pylons could both help, if only marginally, so we will likely only be using the Drownyard when we run out of gas. But what I'm really impressed with is Restless Reef. When used proactively, it gives us 4 cards in the graveyard and a 4/4 body with Death Touch. But when used defensively, this can essentially be a removal spell for anything attacking you, which is a lot of utility to pack into just one land. So what's our timeline? We'll try to start off with some early ramp, since more mana means we have the resources to fill the yard and engage with the board, as well as potentially hardcast our reanimation targets if something goes horribly wrong. Next, we'll play Sidar Jabari, before we fill the graveyard too much, in order to give our opponents as small a window as possible to exile that graveyard. We'll try to make really big graveyard moves on the same terms we're planning on using that graveyard. Our best next plays are the Bladehold Knights, or an incarnation technique to give us more graveyard to work with and 2 more creatures. And as a tip, give the Demonstrate copy to the opponent playing the fewest or worst creatures. Sending enchantments, planeswalkers, or instants and sorceries to the yard can be interaction, and even when it backfires, still asks them to jump through hoops to retrieve their cards. We'll follow that with some interaction that can grow our forces. And follow that up by refueling our hand with these cards. With our board presence flourishing, we can tutor our big reanimation targets into the graveyard with any of these cards, and finally, crash in for the win with either Moonshaker Cavalry or Mirror Entity to pump the team for lethal damage. This deck really sings. The repeatable reanimation gives us a flexible toolbox to deal with aggressive boards, and resilience in the face of controlling boards. A decent chunk of playtest games were even ending on turns 6 and 7, so it definitely has the power to hang with the stronger decks. But probably not the interaction it would need to confidently shut those decks down first. So don't make this an endurance contest. If you see the chance for victory, claim it quickly for the kingdom.
A very special thanks to all my amazing patrons. When I started this channel, I wanted to talk about deck building decisions with my videos, but in practice what ends up happening is that I talk for 30 minutes about all the nuance of a deck, which is longer than I'm comfortable with posting to YouTube. Here, patrons can request priority deck techs, access extended discussions on their favorite decks, in-depth guides on complex game actions, and more.
So if you enjoy this content, consider becoming a patron today. One of the things my patrons have made possible is a special series of deck techs that I'm really excited to show off to you guys. When I finally get them all uploaded, I'll be giving away a special collection of altars and tokens that I've made, corresponding to each deck on the channel. For example, for the Merkle Lord of Bones deck, the prize is a set of double-faced altars of the most prominent cards in the deck, whose backsides are set in the constellation frame with updated text to show that they're acting as enchantments now. For every 1,000 views on each video, I'll increase the prize pool for that deck. All you have to do to be eligible to win is be subscribed to the channel.
Consider supporting the channel today. If you like this video, here are some of the decks I'm working on next, so if you like what you see, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any, and check out the playlist in the top left for more. Thanks for watching!